guys, just a very quick intro to this video. The audio from me is really bad purely because I don't have time to properly master this. I'm about to get on a plane to go to PAX and I want to get this out before the weekend. So you have to put up with some crappy audio from myself. Everyone else sounds fine. I sound terrible. Apologies for that, but there's nothing I could do given the time that I had. Please enjoy the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, hello, it's Skill Up here with another roundtable discussion. We've done a few of these now. Every time a new patch has launched, we've got together a few people who play way too much of the division, and we've asked each other what we thought about the content. And we're going to be doing it again right now. I've got some fantastic guests with us today. First up, someone you all know, no doubt, we've got Arekkz.
Yo, what's up?
Good to see you, man, or hear you.
Good to be back, man. Good to be back. What's this, episode 4 now?
This is, I don't know, actually. I think it's somewhere in that vicinity. So we've been doing it too long, though. That is clear.
Getting old for this.
We are. Direct from the Netherlands, we've got Mr. MarcoStyle.
Hello, everybody. That's me, I guess. That was my cue.
He just woke up. He just woke up, by the way, and it's like 8 p.m. in the Netherlands. So he and I have that in common.
Oh, it's like
6 a.m. It's like 6 a.m. here in Australia. So Marco likes to nap during the day. So that's just his thing.
Skill Up. This was so you and me could be on the same page. This is all planned out. Like, wake up early. I wake up early. Right? I mean,
we've got from is it? Hang on, BreezyPeazy. Are you in Texas?
Yeah, I'm in Texas, man.
Nice. So BreezyPeazy, we all know and love him. How you doing, man?
Excellent.
Awesome.
What's up?
Not much. And from the Dark Zone, because I actually don't know where you are at all, but I've got no idea. So I'm just going to say you're from the Dark Zone. We've got LikeButter.
What's up? Thanks for having me on, dude. I appreciate it.
Always, man, of course. And just because we thought there was just way too much man stink up in here, we thought we'd class the joint up a bit, and we've invited the lovely Tinkkz along.
Man, if I'm the classy one, we're all in trouble.
For those of you that might not have seen Tinkkz before, she has a really fantastic podcast called Bombshell Jackets, aka The Danger Zone. I appeared on there before. It's a very risky business, but it's a great podcast. So do check it out when you get a chance. Tinkkz, thanks for joining us.
That's me. Thank you for having me. This is exciting. I'm
absolutely. So guys, here we are. Patch 1.4 is finally launched. It's been like the craziest journey of like, I don't know, so many video games have never had to go through what the Division has had to go through, but now it's finally here. And so obviously we want to talk about how that's landed, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff today. We're going to talk about loot and, you know, time to kill and PTS and so many things. So we'll progress through them all one by one. But I think we should probably actually start with the PTS because it was such an important initiative in shaping how 1.4 landed. And I'd really like to hear your guys' thoughts on, you know, how that process went and maybe how it needs to work next time. So let's go alphabetically because it's nice and easy. Arekkz, what do you think of the PTS, man?
I mean, I think it's a no-brainer. It's a very, very good thing. You know, we've seen it in the past in different games. It's a great thing to add to the game. I appreciate there was a bit of a divide given that it wasn't on console. So, you know, that's a conversation we'll no doubt touch on in a minute. But the PTS itself, as an entity, is a great idea. You know, gives people a chance to, because, you know, at the end of the day, when you've got a development team, they've got a big enough team, you know, at Ubisoft, but you still have devs and testers. You know, they play the game so much, but you then have players like us who play it a ridiculous amount of time. So allowing those players to basically go hands-on with an update and then test things that maybe developers might not think of is a great way to root out problems. And of course, you know, community members are very, very vocal. So when you give them access to something like this, you know, we've seen it in Blizzard games in the past, World of Warcraft, Overwatch. It clearly works. There's a reason that, you know, it goes down so well. So yeah, I think it was a great initiative. I definitely, you know, the whole not being on console, it was a difficult move, but I still think that despite the fact it wasn't possible to be on console, I still think it was right to put it on PC. It's not, I think if we were in a position where they were like, right, we can't get it on console, so we won't put it on PC as well, would just be like biting the nose off to spite the face. I think it was an important move to give at least a portion of the player base access to the PTS so that they can do some kind of testing. Maybe they don't necessarily speak for everyone, which is fair enough, but at least, you know, a good chunk of the player base do have that. I think it's definitely worth, you know, bringing up. Definitely, you know, as someone that kind of worked at Microsoft before, the reason it's so difficult to get the PTS on console is specifically because every time they want to submit an update, it has to go through certification, which is a lengthy process. So whereas on PC, they can basically press a switch and the button and the update is live. On console, they don't have that flexibility. And in a PTS framework, sorry, go on.
No, I was just to interrupt you. The counter to that, I know, is that Battlefield 4 did have a like a PTS style sort of thing going on, you know? So we know it's possible. We know it's possible.
Yeah, I don't know what, there must be some kind of like crazy framework they need to sort out. But like generally speaking, I mean, maybe it's something that because they didn't necessarily build the game with that framework initially, maybe there's some kind of like, red tape there. But the point is that they still can't be quite as agile as they would be on PC. And in a time like that, when they had limited time and they want to try and get as much done as possible, they do need to be agile. So yeah, I mean, I think, definitely without, it goes without saying, going forward, if we can get it on console, yes, absolutely, we should do. Every single player should have a chance to go and test out a PTS. But regardless, it was a great addition.
For sure, for sure. So Tinkkz, did you spend much time on the PTS?
Yeah, I am a console player, but I did get it for PC for the PTS, and I know that it did divide the community a little bit. I think the biggest slap in the face was that there were console-only issues once 1.4 dropped. I think that was the biggest problem. But otherwise, the PTS was so centered on player-suggested improvements and feedback that it was definitely worth it in the long run.
Yeah, totally. And Marco, you would have spent a lot of time with PTS.
I'm wondering like what those console-specific issues were. You mean like the stuttering or the lagging, that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, because all right.
Lag and things like that, yeah.
Yeah, so it was silky smooth for us on PC, and we were like, oh yeah, this is fantastic. And, obviously it loads into console on day one, and they're just like, I did a video on some of those issues specifically, and the stutter for some people was just absolutely terrible. So it's just sort of quite disappointing. So yeah, but Arekkz, I think you made a good point though about the idea that, should we not have a PTS because everyone can't have a PTS? And I think obviously that would be a bit of a shame because obviously we learned a lot from the PTS, but I guess the question is, like, is there anything that Massive can do for console players to make a bit of a sort of easier pill to swallow? I don't know if anyone has ideas on that, because obviously it just seems like such a difficult
I mean, what
challenge.
they should have done, if in that light, if players can't have access to it on console, they should have at least done like a special report style live stream where they actively show you a build running 1.4 on a console, so that at least players can, because that's what a lot of players do. During the PTS, I think it was great how they were on their usual Twitch stream, playing the PTS, because of course people that don't have access, I mean, that's why a lot of us were streaming as well, right? Because we were like, if you guys don't have access to it, we're going to try and at least give you a chance to look at it. But I mean, one of the big glaring issues is at no point were they showing the console version. And I mean, that's something that, the stuttering thing is such a glaring issue that it's like, it's not even excusable to say, well, players didn't have a PTS, so it wasn't discovered. It's like, that's something that Massive should have caught. I mean, stuttering is pretty obvious. Like a wide portion of the player base were experiencing that. So I don't know how they let that one through the gap. But yeah, regardless, I think if there's no ability to have a PTS, then on the console, then at least allow people to see it, or do some dedicated testing to it, because it feels like they put all the effort into the PC version because it had a PTS, and then the console just kind of got the update. So something like that.
Yeah,
what if they just put that last one there, like that week 4 out for?
Yeah. That makes so much sense. Yeah. I really feel like that's the way they need to go. Just like get it. As I said, refine the design on PC if you like, because obviously there has to be that rapid iteration. But in that last weekend before it's ready to go on consoles, like get a console build out. And I don't know how they do it. I don't know if it's a question of money or time or energy or whatever else. But just having that weekend for console players to be able to test
more time.
It. Yeah,
it's definitely right. Like, if they have to account for, because the main thing they had with 1.4, right, is that they're working against the clock, because every single day that 1.4 wasn't out, people were stuck with 1.3, which was they're losing players doing that thing. So they were like, we need to get it out fast because we've already pushed back survival. And of course they're going to have a mandate to try and get survival out anyway. They also need to account for the 30-day window on Xbox and PC. So they've obviously got stuff to deal with. But I think, in that respect, going forward, if we look forward to something like 1.5 or whatever, like 1.6, 1.7 in the future, if it's not a situation where they need quite as tight of a turnaround, like in 1.4, where it was like iteration upon iteration weekly, then they might have the flexibility to say, all right, we're going to put out a PTS for 1.5. We're going to run it for 2 weeks. Therefore, we've got lead time to submit it for cert, run it on console. That could work. It just means that if they need to kind of change the PTS really quickly, then they're gonna kind of come unstuck. So
sure. So here's an interesting question, and it might be a little bit controversial, and I'm just going to throw it out there because I think it's important to talk about. Obviously, all of us have platforms. All of us here, we have YouTube channels and we have podcasts, and I think a lot of people watch us because they're interested in our views and opinions with relation to our content. And particularly with a PTS, people look at our content and they think, what do these guys think of the PTS, right? So obviously, there was lots of discussion during the whole PTS phase about our different views on things, and I'm wondering, do you guys think we did a good job of displaying the PTS and covering it and providing perspective on it, or do you think we could have actually done better? And obviously, there's full frank disclosure. A lot of people really did not like my coverage of it, but I just wanted to hear more broadly about, like, collectively as a community, how did we do, and could we do a better job next time around? So maybe I don't know, Drew, do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we're definitely a bit limited, obviously, because we only had access to it on PC. So I felt like I had a lot of people who were, super upset that it wasn't on console, but that's not anything that we specifically can change. But I think overall, everyone did a pretty good job, just like kind of letting the community know what's going on and like the changes that are coming up. Because I know I've had a lot of people come to me and say that the only reason they stuck around with the division is because of watching, YouTubers and streamers play the PTS and to know that there's, a bright future at the end of the tunnel. So I definitely think that everyone did a pretty good job. Now, obviously, like I said, we're a bit limited, but overall, I think everyone in the community's kind of came together, and it's been a really awesome experience to see like all the ups and downs in this game and to see so many people kind of adjust to that. You know what I mean?
Sure. And Breezy, do you have any thoughts about sort of like how we as content creators can help those that don't, or sort of like, do a better job for those that don't have access to the content in the same way we do?
I mean, there's the forums and the subreddit. It's kind of difficult when you have a really small voice, right? And obviously being any kind of content creator and having an audience automatically gives you an audience.
Yeah.
And then once you say anything, word spreads. But, I mean, I think that's pretty much the best way, is just keep filling up the forums, the subreddit. If you follow any YouTubers or Twitch streamers, pester them, bug them, put those your views and opinions into their brains. And basically, honestly, what we were seeing, any voice matters, right? Because it's like, I think a lot of people have that, I'm not a YouTuber, I'm not a streamer, nobody's going to listen to me. I mean, you guys saw from the Elite Squad, they didn't just send content creators, right? There was more non-content creators that went out. They are trying to listen to the feedback.
Yeah.
So even if you've never made a Reddit post or anything like that, or a post on the forums, if you see an issue, a problem, there's probably a lot of other people who might agree. And if you post it and people agree with it, it'll get upvoted, it'll get visibility, and it'll just spiral,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's
you guys,
yeah.
Oh,
Go on,
sorry.
Tinkkz.
I think you guys did great, because I don't think that there's a right or wrong way to represent that content, since it's constantly changing and moving. And for testing purposes, as long as people are seeing that, that's really all that matters to me.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think the conversation is good, and I guess there were lots of different ideas put out around, how the PTS was working, and that back and forth I think is really important, because if everyone just sort of is in violent agreement with each other all the time, then the conversation isn't particularly good. But there was some difference of opinion, and I think that was great. I think obviously the challenge though is that console players being excluded in the way that they were made that conversation quite one-sided. So so I'm certainly very conscious of that in the future about like.
I really think that. Oh, sorry.
No, go, Marco, please go.
Because I do want to touch up on this before we move on to the next topic. I really feel like that we weren't given enough time with the PTS.
Really?
Because of course Massive had to like kind of sort of put some sort of speed behind this. They wanted to push it out as fast as possible. But I really feel like that I, as a content creator, didn't get enough time to test every aspect of the division. If I look at my channel now, I look at the videos that I made, I think I would say I did a pretty poor job of overall representing what the PTS is all about, because a big part of the PTS was about balance, right? But there are still so many things in the division now that didn't get properly balanced. Day one that patch 1.4 came out, I had to release an update on why the armor is broken. And I think you agree with me as well that armor is pretty much best in slot everywhere in the moment.
Definitely. We'll
and the same. We'll come to all of that, the balancing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All right,
sure,
well then
sure.
I'm going to let you take it away.
Oh no, I'm saying I completely agree with you. I think you're right. There's still many outstanding issues. I just think it's interesting that you say that we didn't have enough time, because a month on a PTS does feel like a fair amount of time, So yeah, but like look, let's maybe sort of touch on some of the issues you're talking about though. So where did we land at the end of all of this with regards to the patch 1.4? Like, what was the destination? And maybe we can talk first of all about things like time to kill and an overall balance of sort of moment-to-moment combat. How does that feel for you guys right now? Is that in the right spot? Tinkkz, did you want to kick us off on that one?
Well, kind of like what Marco said, armor is still the best in slot attribute. So it's definitely better than 1.3. But for me, one of the biggest issues were the rushers and time to be killed, with the time to be killed being significantly reduced. The only reason there's a problem with it is if your squad isn't focus firing, and that's kind of what the division is for me.
Well, as in?
Like being tactical.
Right.
And if you're not being tactical in that aspect, you should be dying.
Okay, sure. Fair enough.
Sorry.
Get you. And what about you, Breezy? Where do you think things have landed in terms of game balance?
I think when you're just looking at the game in time to kill and time to be killed, I think the game just looks, it feels pretty great. I think it's fine. Like Tinkkz was saying, it's pretty tactical. If you're soloing and you're just running out there ramboing, you're going to get killed, right? Unless you're like kind of slow playing it. Same if you're on a team, if you're way ahead, right? And they've got more health and stuff like that, so you can't really solo everything. You're going to get killed, so you have to be a little more tactical. But like there are like the issues that you guys were talking about, armor being best in the slot. That there's a major problem with the itemization. I think just the time to be killed and time to kill feels good, but our gear is absolutely boring and there's just one stat in the game.
Which is, are you saying it's armor?
Yeah, it's armor.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Well, it's armor on gear, but if you look at weapons, it's pretty obvious there that you never want to like roll for critical hit chance on the big stat, and then you always want to roll for headshot damage on the big stat instead. There's like still so many, how do you say this? Obvious picks if you just do the math, so to speak.
Yeah.
There's like one single way to go, and then of course it differs a bit depending on what weapon you use. Like for example, or that also works for gear set. If you use a Deadeye set for some reason, you might want to roll more critical hit damage on your weapons. But aside from that, the meta is still super, super obvious if you just do the calculations.
Yeah.
And I guess that bothers me a bit, that because to this day, I still haven't made a video about that. And in that sense, I think we did a good job on covering the PTS, but I don't think that we as a player base investigated the game well enough to really come back and because I did the thing with skill power though. The skill power was really, really bad in the first couple weeks of the PTS, and Massive actually changed that, and now it actually is a good pickup again. Up until a certain skill power, like 250,000. But I feel like had we done that for all the other things in the game, then the game would have been a lot more balanced right now. And I feel like we didn't get to that part yet. In the sense that we didn't have enough time to do that. At least I didn't. I couldn't get to that part.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, Breezy, go for it.
Sorry to interrupt. One thing that I was thinking about, I thought about that a lot during the PTS as well. A lot of problems did get fixed, but a lot of the stuff is still very, very cookie cutter. But my point of view on that is, I don't think, I feel like that would require a complete radical change, not just of changing a couple of things here and there. Like, for that to no longer be best in slot, or for us to get some real, actual, viable, options, something else to choose instead of crit chance or the crit damage, right? Or armor, they would literally have to introduce new things to the game. And unless the PTS was really long, or I don't think that could be done unless that's like a new game,
I think it's all about numbers, really. People are always like, if you compare the numbers and you see that if you do one thing that highly outweighs everything else, then that one thing is a problem. If, for example, armor was scaled from 0% damage mitigation to 30% damage mitigation when you spec into it, instead of the baseline starts at 30 and then ends at 60 when you fully spec into it, then the difference will be much smaller, but it would still be okay to spec into that. and then you could go for other options.
I actually don't think it is a matter of numbers, to be honest. I actually think it's a matter of like fundamental game design. And that is to say that at any moment I can be shot. If I'm a glass cannon sitting in the back line, at any moment I can be shot, which means I'm always going to need to focus on survivability. Like if we look at things like World of Warcraft, those games are specifically constructed where glass cannons can build that way because they have a tank that guarantees or all but guarantees that they will take all of the damage all of the time. So I think the challenge for me with armor is the fact that you don't have tanks in this game to be able to soak up aggro the way that other games do. And for that reason, you always need to make sure that survivability is a thing for you. And that's just on the PvE side. PvP side, forget about it. Like everyone has got to stack armor all the time. So for me, the challenge with regards to why armor is so important is not about the numerical side. It's about like the threat management side. That for me is what defines the challenge with the armor meta, and that way I actually really agree with Breezy. The solution to this is like I think really complex and like totally game changing. But yeah, I'm not sure if Arekkz has got thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, I mean, because the point for sort of following up from that is that, you know, to Breezy's point about a lot of the builds being very cookie cutter as well, is that the whole underlying system doesn't support like a flexible, ever changing build. Like, you know, if you look at say games like World of Warcraft and stuff, you know, gear is a very important part of your character. But also you have like, you know, your very, very detailed talent tree, which heavily changes the way that your character plays. You look at something like Division, you know, talents are cool. You know, you swap them in and they'll give you like a slight damage boost if you shoot a suppressed target, or like if you're headshotting, or you can pass your fire around. But they don't realistically change the underlying character build, you know, to the point where you're, you know, it's altering your toughness or the way that you survive or the way that you deal damage, you know, in a heavy way. It's like minor numbers. They're little kind of what I would probably sort of call, you know, like, I don't know, special bonuses or like handy bonuses.
Yeah, bonuses.
Yeah, and even like the skills as well. You know, the skill system. I mean, you know, if you're playing something like World of Warcraft and you want to spec into tank, there are lots of skills that will actively allow you to do that. You know, in this one, you grab a shield or something like that. And then the problem with the gear system as well is that if you spec into, say, you know, you roll your gear a few times and you eventually hit that cap where you can't re-roll anymore, you are then locked out. So you're basically in a position where if you ever want to change, or you do want to kind of like step away from the cookie cutter, like, you know, headshot damage or armor or whatever it is, you either have to get a completely new set of gear and throw all your old stuff away, because, you know, the underlying system of the game is all about rolling something a few times to get something that is good enough, that's locked in, and you just don't change it. Like that's the underlying system, right? And that's the problem. So yeah, if you were to really go down a position where you wanted to have like complete freedom, so, you know, like a lot more in-depth, you know, more in-depth builds, the idea of, you know, like playing with a lot more talents and whatnot, then yeah, it's a fundamental game change. It's probably something we'd more look towards, say, if ever they did a Division 2, then that's something we'd probably get it. So I think as the game exists right now, I don't think, you know, even if Massive do, you know, make some changes in the background, I don't really think we're going to heavily step away from that. I think, you know, I'm personally really happy with where the game is. I really like 1.4. I'm jumping on PC, right? So for me, I'm having a really good experience on two fronts. I'm not only enjoying 1.4, but also because I've made a brand new character, I've gone through the whole leveling experience. You know, I'm now gearing up from scratch. So I've done, which I'm actually super happy about, because if I was on console, I would have kind of built a lot of my builds with, say, the gear that just got upgraded from 1.3, whereas I've just started completely from scratch. So I've been farming everything, thinking really carefully about my builds, and I've been having a great time. You know, for me, I've been playing ever since, you know, the alpha, right? So and when 1.4 dropped and I was running around, I was like, you know what? I haven't had this much fun since that kind of alpha beta launch period. I'm just like, I'm roaming around the open world and just doing stuff, or in the dark zone, and just everything I'm enjoying about it. So I'm super happy with where 1.4 is. But yeah, with regards to the kind of, you know, the item system and stuff, I don't think that's going to move too much within the next few updates. So I'm still kind of happy with where it is. I still think the nice thing is that while, yes, some of the cookie cutter kind of builds with regards to, you know, attribute choices and whatnot are quite limited, the nice thing, at least, we're in a position where there are more gear set choices. You know, it's no longer you must run Striker Sentry. It's like, you know, I'm currently running Firecrest. Firecrest is my new love right now. It's just so much fun to play with. I'm also building a Predator Nomad build. I've got an Alpha Bridge build. I've got a Banshee build. I've got 4 different builds. You know, that's something I've never done before in Division. So yeah, I'm happy.
Totally agree. So Drew, what are your thoughts on current sort of gear set build diversity?
Right. I think we're getting a little bit too like far ahead of ourselves right now. Cause like if you look at what 1.4 was like meant to do and the amount of time that they had to do it, it was to completely rebuild the way skills work, the way loot drops were, the experience of getting geared up and that kind of thing. I feel like, you know, the consideration with the armor, which is obviously an issue. Everyone's just putting Best-In-Slot as armor. That's stuff that like something will get fixed down the road. But I think like for 1.4 and what needed to be changed, like I've been seeing more people run around with different like gear sets than I've ever seen in the division. Just so many people running around with different stuff. And I think they've made some amazing changes with 1.4. As far as the armor percentage problem, which I think would be a really good fix for this, is have armor penetration work off the percentage of what, you know, people build. So for example, like if somebody's going to stack armor in slot on every single piece of gear, obviously this is for PvP. If somebody comes along with armor penetration and it works off the percentage of armor that they have, it's going to be more effective for that person to shred that person that's completely stacked in armor. So it will make sense to put other things in like exotic damage resilience and stuff like that. Another thing I think they could do is they could make it so that like NPCs do different types of damage rather than like raw, you know, bullet damage.
True.
For example, I don't know if they're, I want to say the LMB, sometimes it feels like they do, like, I don't know if you ever seen like the blue bullets that hit you. I feel like if they had the damage spread out between maybe like shock damage as well with the shots, it would make people spec into exotic damage resilience more because the NPCs are going to hit you hard even if you're completely stacked on armor. So I think that's something that they could do in the future and definitely look into. But I think overall, at least for me, like I think 1.4 was such a huge breath of fresh air for the division. Like finally we're seeing like experiences that we enjoy that we haven't seen in the division thus far. So I'm overall pretty happy with it. I do know that things need to be changed in the future, but I think for the time being and like the amount of time they had to completely, you know, overhaul the game, I think they did a pretty good job.
Absolutely, for sure. So Tinkkz, what about you? What kind of gear sets are you running right now? What are your thoughts on all this? Like, where are you at?
Well, I kind of wish that we could gear less as solo players. I feel like even when we're running as a team, we're still a little bit more selfish with all of our stats, like you were saying, more like a World of Warcraft type of feel. But I do like how there are sets that were in 1.3 that we weren't even using at all. Nomad, Firecrest, that are some of the top tier builds now.
Yeah, I know that it's really sort of like turned on their head quite a few of those where like they were sort of like deleted all those sets before and I'm like, hey, I kind of wish I didn't delete all those sets, but actually it really didn't matter that I did because I got like 400 of them as soon as I logged in. So that all kind of worked out in the end. But like, maybe we can sort of pivot from sort of this a little bit, but maybe we can talk about how, because we talked a little bit about time to kill and game balance. We talked about the sort of loot meta. What about like game difficulty? Where do you guys think that's landed at this point? Is this the right level of difficulty for the game at the end game? Is there sort of a need for more difficulty? Is it too difficult for some people? Like, where do you think we've landed at the end? Marco, what are your thoughts on that?
I think the whole process to gear up through HVTs and that kind of thing, I think that is at the right difficulty right now. I don't think it's too difficult. However, for those that are at the end game that sort of have their build, I feel like there's not much of a challenge left to do because the incursions basically got skilled the same way as the HVTs, as everything in the dark zone, as everything in the open world. I guess it's skilled for 4 players by default, but it's still the enemies are not hitting harder or not doing anything crazy there. And I feel like we're missing some sort of real PvE endgame, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think Breezy also made a video about this that once you get geared up, that is the end game in the division. There's no need to min-max. And also, you could pretty much do every content with just a random build. Pretty much like you showed off. You have like you had like a Predator's Mark holster, and then you had an Alpha Bridge mask, and then you had a Firecrest backpack, just some really weird build, and you could still just do the incursion with 3 other people running a completely random build, and you'd probably be able to beat it if you play well enough.
On heroic, yeah, that's right, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like
that's an interesting point, though. It's sort of like, is that a bad thing? And because I think we can't naturally assume that is bad. I mean, like many people would think, yeah, cool, we should just be able to play whatever gear we want in any way that we want on the hardest difficulty, and we should just be able to progress through that because games are for fun. You know, they're not work, right?
I think the problem in 1.3 is that doing those things were mandatory to get the best gear. You had two choices practically. You could either choose to do one of the incursions, which were pretty hard for people that had like 200 gear score or something, not min-max whatsoever. Or you could go into the Dark Zone, and if you didn't have a 4-man group, well, you're just gonna get ganked the whole time because that's just how the Dark Zone is. But now that storyline missions gives you the best gear, HVTs give you the best gear, open world, even killing random NPCs can give you the best gear. I think there should also be a place for a challenge where people can really test, their builds out, to really test their build, see if they can beat certain content, and then not get better loot for that, because the best loot should still be able to drop in the HVTs and in all the other activities in the game. But maybe drop more of it, or maybe get a cosmetic item, something that people can be proud to wear. Something for the endgame players that do not like PvP in this game. Something that gives them a challenge after they've gotten their gear. I think that's really important, because you see a lot of people saying, oh, I left the division, but now I want to come back. I left the division, now I want to come back. I think there's two types of people that left the division. There's the one type that could not gear up and it was too difficult, so they left. This update is fantastic for them, right? They can go back into the game and do stuff they've never been able to do before. But there's also the type of players that couldn't find a challenge even in 1.3. That left because there was nothing left to do. And I think this update isn't doing anything for them. It's basically another slap to the face. Coming back, it's still just as easy, so to speak. And I think having that PvE endgame, I think that's really important.
Yeah, Arekkz, what are your thoughts, man? Because I know you think a lot about PvE endgame.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, this is something you've been saying, since day one. Even before that, when they did those kind of podcasts pre-beta or whatnot, and they were talking about like ideas for endgame. I mean, the thing is, right, the game as it is right now, I think difficulty-wise is actually in an appropriate place, because what the Division is right now is, imagine Destiny and take the raids out. That's what Division is, right? Division is you've got your story missions and you have your strikes, which are your incursions, right? Incursions are not raids. Incursions are basically strikes.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So you look at Destiny. Strikes are not difficult for endgame players. Missions are not difficult for endgame players, and that's they shouldn't be, because once you're appropriately geared, there needs to be this because the one thing that 1.3 didn't have, there was no element of, you never really felt strong unless you had like a perfectly min-max build. And even then, I would say at a stretch, you don't really, there was never a position where you went out and you were like, right, I've been playing this game for 20 days and I've got ridiculous amount of hours. I've got a really nice build. I feel good about myself. No, there's a certain element where when you play these kind of games, Warcraft, Guild Wars, Destiny, and you get overgeared and you get to the end game, pretty much all content apart from the end game is basically trivial. And I don't think there's an issue. Yeah, there's not an issue with that. That's how the game should be. So that's what Division is right now. I feel like the difficulty is appropriate. It's one of those things where if you play through, you have a good build and you play sensibly, you play tactically, like Tinkkz was saying, in a squad, you'll be fine. You won't really come across too many troubles. If you're stupid, for example, today I was just testing out a weapon, I was recording, I was just standing out of cover, not even watching what I was doing, and I got killed because I was being an idiot, right? So like that's that kind of thing. That makes sense. That's how it is. But it's just because the Division is lacking some sort of heavy end game PvE content, which it needs. Right? It needs a raid. And that's one of those things where actually kind of slightly different to what Marco said. I feel like if you had raid content, it should have specific raid gear that you cannot get anywhere else, because for those players that need to be able to like have some kind of content that they'll feel challenged in, they need some kind of reward. So in the same way that you play a Warcraft or you play Destiny and you complete a raid and you can only get that gear in that raid, that's fine, because it means that players can then go and do the rest of the game to gear up and get loads of good stuff, and they don't necessarily have to touch the end game. They can still enjoy the experience. But for those people that do want it, so yeah, there needs to be some sort of, and if they're going to go down the raid route, I really want to do it, because imagine if you had like a 8-player or 16-player raid in the Division, it would be absolutely incredible. But it needs to be done the right way. Like, it needs to be mechanically difficult. They cannot under any circumstance just be like, hey, we've made a raid which is basically a big incursion with
horde mode
now. Yeah, it's like no. If they're going to do it, they need to start introducing like mechanical difficulties, things that are mechanics people need to learn, things where people need to like understand roles in a team. They need to be in the right place at the right time in order to kind of hit this condition, work with debuffs and buffs and whatnot. But yeah, if they have that, then that's where the true challenge will come. So I think the long and short of it is the Division.
I agree with you. I just don't think there should be raid gear, because if you think about it for just a second, you're gonna go back to exactly what 1.1 was. where
No, I'm
players,
not.
With
Well,
players
like
what?
players
Go-
have to do Falcon. They have to do Falcon Lost in order to get gear set items, and gear set items are going to be the strongest. Like the raid
no,
items
but
are
see,
going to be the strongest.
yeah. This is the appropriate thing. This is where you need to balance it right. I'm not saying that raid gear needs to be better than the other gear. It needs to be different. So, for example, in Destiny, you can get raid gear, and raid gear is a set of end game gear, but you don't have to do the raid to be end game ready. You can go and do Crucible. You can go and do missions. It gives you different stats. So it might be like, imagine it like a gear set where it would have a different bonus that wouldn't necessarily be like having Striker Sentry in 1.3. It would just be a different set that you will only get from that activity, but it won't necessarily give you an advantage over other players, if you see what I mean. It's like an achievement thing. People want to be able to, like, you could stand in a social place and people could see your gear and be like, all right, that guy's raided. Doesn't mean to say that if you go up against him in the dark zone, he will annihilate you, or if you go into PvE, he will destroy you. It will, more than likely, the way that raid gear typically works is that it has bonuses that or like a gear set bonus that's specifically designed for that encounter. So let's just say, I don't know, making something up off the top of my head, if the raid focused around cleaners and it had something that like set people on fire, then you would have a gear set that specifically like nullified fire damage so that you can wear it in the raid. You see what I mean? So it doesn't, it's not designed to kind of put you above players. It's just designed to kind of be that set that helps you in the raid, and that's kind of how it will work.
Yeah.
What if they made the raid more like the difficulty was fine for non-min-max players? Anyone could kind of do it, and then they built a higher tier where then you could get cosmetic items and really test your build, and it'd be really difficult, but the rewards are more cosmetic items and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that'd be a really good model. I think so, because I think there are a lot of casual players in this game, a lot of solo players, and I think as the community has coalesced over time, I think it's really been very protective of that capability, of that part of it. Like, Destiny, for instance, if you were to walk in there and say, "Oh, solo players must have access to everything," like, people would laugh you out of that community, be like, that's not a thing there, right? But here in the Division community, that's a thing. We absolutely say to each other, no, solo players need to be able to do this game, because it's a looter, right? And looters can be played solo. Like, that's part of the DNA of most looters. So I think that people are quite naturally protective of that, and I think that kind of suggestion is a really good one, Tinkkz. So Breezy, I remember you did put out a really great video on this subject earlier. Have you got any other thoughts about how the end game needs to develop?
Definitely. So you guys were talking about raids. When I look at games like this, I think there's two options. You have your Destiny option, that's a raid, not World of Warcraft difficult, but it's got mechanics and casual players can get it done, right? It's not the easiest thing in the world, but it's not going to require 5 days a week, raiding 5 hours a day just to down one boss and then move on to the next one. You know what I'm saying? It's not that hard. You have that style, and then generally your raids are going to give you special loot, which you guys talked about, right? And it would give you a reason to actually want to do it. And then you have the more Diablo-ish Path of Exile style endgame, where you don't really have those encounters. A solo player can get everything done. But think about this. What keeps you playing that game? After I've played hour on hour on hour, my barbarian is completely stacked. I'm going to reroll a monk. I'm going to reroll a wizard. And then bam, the game just opened up. Here's 100 more hours for me to play. Why doesn't the Division have that? Because you only have one character. One character can equip everything, can do everything. So because everybody has the same loot pool, you're going to get bored doing the same thing over and over again, right? You can't just do the underground for 200, 300, 400 hours because you're going to get bored, because you're going to get the same loot all the time. So that's
all of the loots.
Yeah, you're going to get all the loots, and you're going to be able to do it solo. There's never going to be any sort of actual challenge. I completely agree with the raid style endgame. Now, here's the other problem that you run into, because it's not World of Warcraft difficulty. You're going to do it, it's going to be easy, and you're going to get bored, just like everybody does in Destiny. Oh, cool, the hard mode came out, I did it, 2 weeks, bam, I'm done, let's go back to the Crucible. We don't, right? We don't have that, though. You have the Dark Zone. So, because the PvE is going to, no matter what, in a game like this, the PvE, unless they make it like World of Warcraft, like just awesome difficulties, insane encounters where you can really dedicate yourself to it, or just loot like amazing, just hundreds and hundreds of different kinds of unique weapons and armors and gear sets like Diablo and Path of Exile. You're just gonna, all right, I got Predator's Mark, I got Nomad, I got, Firecrest, I'm done.
Yeah.
And then you're going to go into the dark zone. Half of the people aren't going to participate because either you're solo or you're getting tired of getting ganked, or yeah.
Mm-mm. So Drew, what are your thoughts, man? Where do you think the PvE end game needs to go?
I think overall, like, difficulty as in like the jump from normal, hard to challenging, it feels really good, right? Like when you're getting geared up and you're getting gear sets and you're starting to get those bonuses, you start to feel stronger as time goes on, which is how it should be. I do think, however, that there needs to be more difficult options for those types of people who want to, grind and have a full group that's all coordinated, that plays with each other all the time. So I personally think you guys are 100% correct with the raids. I would make the raids super, super difficult, though. Like, I wouldn't have it be like even one step above incursions. I would have the raids be extremely hard, maybe like 8-player squads that require tons and tons of proper building and proper teamwork, and have it be something that feels accomplishing to beat, right? I think that's what this game, now that like the progression feels good and like the loot tables feel good, I think we can all agree that like we look at high ends and we look at set items to be kind of the same level now, right? Like, but set items obviously work together with other set items. I think there needs to be more like higher levels of rarer loot, maybe like exotic, legendary items, that kind of thing that you can only get in endgame activities, or have an extremely, extremely small chance to drop maybe in the dark zone or a regular mission. I'm talking like minuscule a chance of having it, but there needs to be like specific, I don't care if it's outfits, skins, maybe named weapons. I think named weapons is one thing that they could go with this route, like have like weapons that look really cool and have specific talents that no other weapons have, and make it so that people have a reason to really, really try to get to that end game in order to do the raids. I think that would be phenomenal, and I think it would give PvE players something to do at the end game. And also, like me, like I PvP a lot, but I really wish there were something at the end of this game that could really, really challenge me hard without having these NPCs that just one shot you and like are super spongy, which obviously isn't there anymore. So I think the answer is to have raids that have proper mechanics that require proper teamwork, and to have it so that, like I said, it's a lot harder, but not harder in a sense of, just jacking the enemy health and damage up. You know what I mean? Like they need to find other ways to make it harder, like whether it's more enemies that work together in certain ways, or have mechanics where like the bosses are super difficult to take out and you need proper communication, that kind of thing. So I think overall in 1.4, the difficulty feels good, but I just feel like there needs to be more after challenging.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and I'm sort of segueing a little bit back to where we were going before, but I feel like one of the byproducts of the current game difficulty and design is that group-focused builds are very much dead, right? As in, things like Reclaimer, it's like, why would you bother at this point? Sentry's Call, many people are not running this right now because you simply just don't need it. Your gear is good enough if you build correctly that you're going to crunch through everything right now. And I think that's kind of fine as it is, but I do think that as in like it works, we can progress, we get lots of gear, it's cool, it's fun, it's chill. But like for the long-term health of the game, I really feel like we do need that additional layer of challenge. One, because it appeals to hardcore players, but two, because it actually opens up the loot like build diversity pool significantly. Like the whole idea of like a paladin or a shaman or a buff focused class is just not in the game right now. Whereas literally 2 weeks ago, it was a core part of this game. Like that was like a huge thing. If you weren't running with someone that was bringing a stacked pulse or smart cover, then that was a problem. Now, I definitely don't want to go back to those days where that is a requirement, but it was cool to know that like smart cover and pulse and like buffs were a thing. And I think that certainly a goal I think needs to be sort of to get a little bit closer back towards the need for those sort of support players, because right now I think they've really been pushed out of the game.
I think I thought about that too, and I think it's a really cool thing. For a while, right? Electronics builds were kind of labeled as support players.
Yeah.
But we just kind of turned into that, right? Like that, it wasn't in that in the beginning.
No.
But I'm pretty sure electronics has always been pretty strong. We just took so long to realize how to break the game with it.
Yeah.
And then this whole notion of support builds and people supporting, and then it's like, then the meta became you got to have a support player.
Yeah.
But I think if they relabeled and turned electronics into a literal support stat, I think that would be a cool thing for the game, right? Like as a part of the tutorial, it even said, you stack electronics, this is for support. And then the meta would become, oh, you got to have a support player on your team when you're doing these things. That's why it's so difficult. But, and then, you know, we run into the problem where support's too strong because it breaks PvP, but I like that.
Yeah. So I think
The support, sorry. Not
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah. So I think Pete, that's probably a good segue then. I guess we do need to talk about the Dark Zone. You know, I'm hearing so much talk right now that the Dark Zone's never been in a better place and people really love it and whatever else. I'm really interested to hear thoughts. So maybe Drew, you could kick us off. Like, how is PvP right now? How is the Dark Zone? How is that all looking?
It's definitely the best that it's been, hands down. I think like it was that moment when we first started going to the Dark Zone, no one really knew how to like min-max their build and that kind of thing. Like the combat back then felt really good too. But right now, as far as like everyone being like geared, like if you're in a group and everyone's geared up and you're with, you know, on a server where everyone else is geared up, like the fights feel pretty strategic and they feel really good. Like the time to kill is nice and it doesn't feel like it did in 1.3 at all. I do think obviously there needs to be more changes, but I've never seen so many people running different builds in the Dark Zone, and it's cool. Like I know it's a problem on consoles right now because the auto aim still needs to be adjusted on the shotguns and that kind of thing. But I think the Dark Zone has been and will be much better down the road, and I think that it's, you know, definitely increase the amount of things you can do there as far as like having builds be viable. You don't have to run with Sentry and Smart Cover anymore. You can kind of build more variety and try different builds and stuff. But I definitely think in the future we need a separate, you know, multiplayer that doesn't have skills and like have the dark, because sometimes I just feel bad shooting people in the Dark Zone. I really do, because like you'll see somebody just farming and like you as a player who wants to PvP, I have to shoot that player in the back in order for, you know, for me to
you
get
have to.
status.
You have no choice.
You know what I'm saying? Like
I cannot
in
wait
order
to see the comments,
PvP,
but the comment section is
yeah,
gonna just
you know what I mean? Like
I
in
do,
order
I
to
do.
have.
I've done a video
Yeah, to have
specifically on this
action.
topic. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You should
So-
have
Back in my streams,
PvP.
around. Go on.
Oh, I was just saying you shouldn't have to feel bad PvP.
Yeah, exactly. I
Right.
remember back in my beta streams, I used to apologize after killing every single person. I was just like, I shouldn't have to do that, man. I should just be like, no, I'm just.
I personally wish they had like a bounty system or something like that, or what's that called? Like a status where I can set myself as being a PvP player or a rogue, so I don't need to just
Flag.
shoot some person in the back. Like I want people to know when I go in the Dark Zone that I'm, you know, a PvP player or a rogue status. So maybe like a status. I forget what that's called. Like, you know, on some games you have like bandit or
you have like
hero.
it's a flag. Like you can have like a flag. For
Right,
it, yeah.
like
Yeah, I kind of feel like though, here's my view on this, right? I feel like I'm getting, I don't go into the Dark Zone. I don't like the Dark Zone, right? That's a whole other story. But I feel like I obviously heard a lot about the Dark Zone because of the fact that, you know, I have a comment section. I get literally like hundreds or sometimes thousands of comments a day. What I'm seeing now is that there's very few complaints about the Dark Zone other than shotguns, obviously, because I think right now people have other options to get gear. Before, the Dark Zone was like where you had to go. That was literally the end game because the PvE content was just pushed you out as a solo player. So you thought, well, I'm going to try the Dark Zone. I'll try my luck. I'll try and get some gear. And then you go through that frustrating process of just being ganked by someone. Now people have so many other options to get gear. They only go into the Dark Zone when they're ready to PvP, I think. I think the expectations have been more aligned now because those who are wanting gear don't go into the Dark Zone, which I think is so great, you know? It's, I think, a really positive step forward for the game and for the community as well, because I feel like when you do shoot that person in the back, I feel like they saw it coming a little bit more than the other person who was just hoping it didn't happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, it's definitely that way back at the beginning of the game where you kind of had to go there to get some of the, to get a lot of the good loot. You basically, you were in this position before where, I spoke about this way back at the beginning, where the dark zone is not a conventional place because it blurs the line. You walk, a lot of people, because you don't actively go to a menu and select multiplayer, you walk into a multiplayer space. A lot of people, especially if they haven't played, say, World of Warcraft on a PvP server, they're not used to this notion of being able to be attacked if they're not ready for it. So, but because as you say, they were forced into it, back in the original game, they're like, if I want to get good gear, I kind of need to be here. But because people have so many sources now, you have the people that, if they don't like it, they don't have to set foot in there. And then the people that are. So I think it's definitely, I've jumped back in, because I used to, especially around, when the game first came out and like, 1.1, even 1.2, I spent a load of time in the dark zone. It's only really 1.3 that I just kind of stopped because it's just like the enjoyment factor was gone. But yeah, I've been jumping back in. It just feels really good again. Yeah, you definitely have those kind of beta-esque fights where, you're like, for example, if you look back to say 1.3, if you lost in the dark zone, a lot of the time you didn't genuinely feel like you lost because the other person was better than you. It was just like, they're probably, I have died to an NPC, or they're probably just like, they've either got better gear than me, or I'm like over geared and I'm just like ripping through them. There was never like there wasn't a lot of the time an even battle. Whereas now, you have some decent fights. I was just extracting the other day. Someone picked a fight at me, and it was a decent fight. It actually went on for a while because, of course, we were using different skills as well. It wasn't just like, hey, let's drop Pulse and Survivor Link. I was using my turret and messing around with people and stuff. So yeah, there's definitely that enjoyment factor, and I'm just, I'm super enjoying just jumping back in the dark zone, and I'm not too worried. To that point, if someone shoots me in the back when I'm running down the street, doesn't annoy me. I'm like, what, let's just turn around and try and fight. So yeah it's good.
So Marco, you've been very quiet during this conversation, and I know you go into the dark zone as well. What are your thoughts on current dark zone, how it's working?
I really like the dark zone right now. There are so many builds that I still want to try, so many builds that I have tried that just worked recently. I feel like I can be a support, I can be a tank in a 4-man group, and it just kind of works, which is, I think it's fantastic right now, the dark zone. It's still, though, a lot of people that you meet, again, they don't want to PvP, but you still kill them anyway, so you get the rogue timer, and then people that do want to play PvP, they know that, you're there and they're going to come for you. But I've had some really great moments. I played with my 4-man versus Witz's 4-man and versus some other well-known 4-mans, and it's just, it's been the best it's ever been. And I've really enjoyed being able to finally be a little bit more tactical in the dark zone rather than just sit on my smart cover and just rapid fire my Deadeye and that kind of thing. So it's really great right now.
That's a pretty glowing endorsement. Given where the dark zone was just a very short time ago, to hear all you guys just say how the good state that it's in, that's I think a pretty big deal. So that's maybe I need to step into the dark zone. Maybe I need to give that a go.
It's fun, man.
Maybe I'll give it a try.
It's definitely.
I always just felt so bad killing people. That was the part that I just hated. And I guess now, because people are so much more aligned in terms of their expectations stepping in, I feel like I could probably go in there and not feel as guilty. So
the way you can kind of see it as well. The way you can kind of see it as well. People can gear up outside of the dark zone now. So if they go into the dark zone, you have that risk versus reward factor. And if you want to kill people, well, then you're the risk factor. Just
for sure.
Get used to it.
You're also seeing a lot of people use like the Banshee 4-piece where they don't like lose any credits and XP.
That's so
good. You're seeing people that normally wouldn't PvP run in PvP. It's great. It's awesome.
Yeah. That is actually really good. I think the design of that set is so excellent for that reason. But it's it sort of short circuits the sort of one of the core design tenets of the dark zone, and I think that's a really interesting choice they made to go down that path. It's kind of like, we're going to do a gear set that's completely removes the risk factor for PvPing.
Well, you still lose your loot, remember?
Oh, you still lose your loot, absolutely. But loot is not a thing right now that you really care that much about losing. Sometimes if you get an amazing god roll, yeah, you do. But you're getting so much loot that it's like...
Got to protect that hungry hog, man.
That's true. That is true. Now that it's
I don't have one of them on PC yet. I'm going around trying to get that on PC.
I think I had one. I swear to God, it got deleted from my inventory in the update.
I have all the weapons on Xbox.
It would have been like 204 anyway, so it wouldn't be useful.
Yeah, true.
You want to get to 229?
Yeah, absolutely. You do have to grind for that. So we've all said that dark zone's a pretty good state, but I know that we've always talked about the idea for like a dedicated... Oh, sorry, Tinkkz, you got thoughts?
Talk about dark zone?
Yeah, sorry, Sorry. What a jerk. Worst host ever. Please,
girls
hit us,
don't
Tinkkz.
go in the dark zone.
I don't PvP.
Hit me up, Tinkkz. What do you got?
People killing me. None of my friends like to go to the dark zone, so I've always been solo in the dark zone, which means I haven't had any fun up until now. One of the first things I did on PC for the PTS was go in there solo and it was so much fun. I could actually kill things, which I couldn't do before. My biggest gripe though with the Dark Zone is that there's no activity reward for winning the engagements, except for like halting someone else's progress. And I know you said loot isn't a big deal right now, but there may be something that person really wanted that that you technically don't want. But so I think that's my biggest issue with it. There should be maybe some type of game modes or something that you get for winning those engagements.
Yeah,
other than halting their progress.
You mean like a format where it's a even fight between the people fighting and everybody gets rewards at the end? Like every other PvP game on the planet?
Don't be ridiculous, Breezy. Stop coming up with these crazy ideas.
Actually, to that point of people getting things, that could actually tie nicely into what Drew said about like having a way to sort of so that people know you're a PvP player. One thing they don't do very well in this game is it's not even that. I was thinking the like cosmetic items, right? Like I'm a massive fan of customization. Like I think the biggest thing that I've had to leave behind on Xbox is my pom-pom beanie collection. Screw the weapons, man. I left my cosmetics behind. I spent a long time building them. My character looks the best. But anyway, imagine that point.
No, I had skinny jeans, please.
Exactly. But imagine to that point, right? What if if you spend a lot of time in the Dark Zone, you do enough encounters. What if, say, when you get different tiers, you get like special cosmetics, and when you wear them, like someone like Drew that spends a lot of time in the Dark Zone, he can be dressed in like Dark Zone cosmetics. So if someone sees him, they'll be like, "That's a Dark Zone guy." He's there. He gets that because he PvPs, because he does this, and like by seeing someone, because that's the problem at the moment. I know Division's never really been about outlandish, crazy looking armor. It's been about much more, like conservative looking, respectable gear and stuff. But it would be nice if there was a way where you could look at someone and you can kind of like identify the kind of person they are. That is
like one of the core.
Man.
That is one of the core problems that I have with the Dark Zone. I hate the fact that when I shoot someone, I have absolutely no idea what I'm shooting at. They could have like all the toughness in the world or none. They could be fully stacked skill power or none. Like, DPS glass cannon or like I have no idea when I shoot something what it is, and I feel like if they could add some sort of system that would allow me to know what the target is and its capabilities, that would be such a big deal. Like that would honestly open up a huge part of the PvP endgame for me, because I feel like without that component, it's not possible for me to pre-calculate how I'm going to take down that target. I kind of just need to hope that they have a sort of a build that will fall over quickly, rather than like, oh wait, they've got like 700k toughness back in patch 1.3. No point in doing that. I'm just going to run away now. Like that is so silly to me. So I think, you're absolutely right, Arekkz. If we could develop some sort of system that lets you look at a player and know what they are, that would be awesome.
Can I add on to that really quickly?
Yeah.
So I looked up the word I was thinking of. I was thinking of reputation. So like there's a reputation system in games like DayZ where like if you're a bandit a lot, you'll have like a bandit outfit. I think that for players like who are in the Dark Zone, I think they should have like rogue specific gear that you like get or unlock when you go rogue or getting a certain amount of like division kills or whatever, and then have a reputation system. Like, so for example, like the outfit that who was that rogue mission where you first see the rogue agent and he's wearing like the hood with the goggles. I forget what his name is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Like I want to be able to wear that outfit so that people can be like, oh, like he goes rogue a lot, and I would wear that like with pride because that outfit's awesome. I forget who's the bosses with those.
I think it's him, isn't it? Is it Kina? Or something
No,
like that.
Isn't it like in the police academy mission at the end of it, you see the first wave agent there? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
I know the one you're
that
talking
outfit.
about. Yeah.
That would be sick.
You see a lot of. I'm sorry.
No, you.
I was just talking about like you see a lot of bosses with that outfit, and I think it would be the LMB outfit. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Definitely.
Bluebird or whatever. I think that's one of the HVTs. He wears that outfit. I think that would be super cool if there was like customizable like cosmetics for people who kill like a lot of rogues or people who go rogue a lot and get a lot of kills. And I think that that reputation system, or at least like you said, cosmetic items that you can unlock, people would have more of an idea like, oh yeah, that guy goes rogue a lot, or that guy is a rogue killer. I gotta watch out for him.
Yeah, because you know that kind of standoff you have, like like if two people go to an extraction point and you start like, I don't know, waving or like dancing because you're thinking like, I'm not gonna start a fight. If you rock up in your like Dark Zone suit and I'm like, I probably shouldn't trust this guy, or like I'm carrying some good loot, I probably shouldn't put this on the rope. So that'd be cool.
I think.
What if you got more reputation for killing someone with that gear, and then less reputation for killing someone, or even that flagged system? You'd get more reputation for killing someone flagged, and you'd lose reputation for killing someone that isn't flagged.
Yep.
I feel like
definitely something they could do.
I'm such a collector as well. Like I'm such an objective focused player. Like when I play, I'm asking, what am I doing? What am I collecting? And I feel like if they added that sort of stuff to the DZ, you know, stuff that I needed to earn and collect and like add to my, you know, my inventory, my collection, that would really motivate me as a player to jump in there. Because right now, there's nothing in the Dark Zone that separates the reward system from any other part of the game, you know. And I reckon if there was that kind of specific loot, I'd totally be down for that.
But are they forcing you to go into the DZ at that point?
Are they forcing you then? That's a very good question. Very good question.
It's cosmetic that you're not forcing anybody. See, the thing with 1.3, like you had to go and do incursions to get the best gear. But if it's cosmetics, people really don't have a reason to say that you're forced to be wearing that cool gear, you know?
For sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was
To
a
add
stupid
to this,
joke.
Yeah,
one of
Breezy,
my
go for it.
favorite things, like in any game that has open world PvP or any sort of that system that I always loved growing up, was that basically that reputation system. It would, like in other games, it'd be like a rank. So like a person walking around, that would be right next to his name. Like you would see this crazy rank, and you'd be like, this guy has killed so many people. Or like a title, right? When you see his name, you see like Grandmaster,
High Warlord,
this.
Yep.
And you see it, you're like, oh, I'm probably gonna die, or I'm about to fight this guy. You know?
Yeah. That is cool. That'd be awesome. So, so we're nearing the end of our time allotted, I think. Let's maybe talk about where this game needs to go next. So obviously we've talked a lot about the future, but where do you guys, so Survival is obviously coming soon. We know that it's sort of scheduled for this year. What do you guys think Survival really needs to bring to the table? So maybe Drew, do you want to start us off on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Survival, obviously, like with any of the patches, they need to add more loot, more levels of loot. And I think there's going to be a system now that everything kind of feels balanced, right? Where I think they were kind of scared to add higher gear levels, like the gear score levels, because when you have the NPCs like kind of spiraling out of control with their health and their damage, it felt like they probably were a bit restricted to how much they added. I think now that it's like completely balanced and it feels good progressing through the game, I think they should add like maybe 240, 268, 290 gear, something like that. Like keep adding more and more levels of gear. But I really, really want to see like a dedicated PvP zone, man. Like I've been wanting this, because you got to think like with 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3, that's all PvE updates, right? There's been nothing for the game for PvP at all. Not a single thing. However, I do think that it needs to bring more end game for PvE players as well. Like I just want raids so bad. But as far as Survival goes, I would be really happy if there was a dedicated PvP zone and just more loot and hopefully like higher levels of rarity loot. If something is ever going to come in the future, I'd like to see, because obviously gear sets are pretty easy to get now, right? I want items that drop at an extremely low percentage that we can get and feel good about getting, you know?
For sure.
Like the Hungry Hog.
Oh, the Hungry Hog. All right. Marco, what do you think, man? Where's the game need to go next?
I really don't know, to be honest. I really have no idea. Of course, some more dedicated PvP would be nice. But I'm just hoping that 1.5 gives us a little more end game as well. Maybe like another incursion that will be a little more difficult than the ones that we have. But I really don't know. I think I'm just gonna wait for what 1.5 has to offer until they're gonna talk about it.
The incursions have gotten better. You gotta admit, like Dragon's Nest, I think was like the best incursion of them all for sure.
It was great,
except for the last part. Yeah, I agree.
The thing I liked about the last part in Dragon's Nest, even though it wasn't perfect, was that Dragon's Nest was like baby mechanics. It's like mechanics for people that are learning what mechanics are, right? It was really basic.
Don't stand in the fire.
It was don't stand in the fire, and it was two people need to press a button at the same time. It's very basic, right? But they're getting the core components. You know, we've gone from sit behind this box and deal with these waves, only go out and place a bomb, and then of course, you know, run around and try and carry a crate. Oh no, you're gonna die because they're shotgunners. I hate that thing. I'm not gonna talk about Tinkkz now. But I think I got triggered with that one. But then Dragon's Nest, you know, at least there were some, you know, and also like with the first one, when you know when you had the 4 guys that came out, it kind of introduced the whole notion of, you know, like managing your different waves and stuff. So it was definitely a step in the right direction. But I mean, to that point, I agree that if we're gonna have, I feel like incursions need to keep going in the right direction. I feel that they're definitely not hitting their potential at all right now. And if we do get a new one, I want to see them lean slightly more on mechanics, definitely, because I mean not necessarily too heavily, because, you know, understandably, as I said before, you know, an incursion is not a raid, so it's not, I don't expect it to be super heavy mechanics where it takes people like hours to figure out, but at least have it so that it's slightly more than just press a button kind of thing. So fact that, but no, I completely agree with Drew. You know, I mean, I love the Dark Zone, and now that 1.4 has got it back in a good place, I'm spending a lot of time in there, really enjoying it. I feel like, you know, we need some kind of, you know, PvP Dark Zone. I mean, like, look at the Dark Zone. There's like, I've been saying, you know, since day one, look like north of the Dark Zone, there's Central Park. I want to go to Central Park. Imagine like if you open that up, that's a huge open field. They describe it as like a graveyard. Like there's like dead bodies there. Imagine having like rogue fights in like an open area. That'd be crazy. So yeah,
that'd be cool. So Tinkkz, what do you reckon? What's next?
I agree with a lot of the PvP comments, but as a lore nerd, they're going to have to bring a lot more lore than Underground. I was kind of disappointed in the lore. I thought that there was going to be some, you know, this deep threat in the Underground. I thought we were going to find something more in depth than we did. So I feel like survival with the hunters, they have an opportunity to really make lore like what it was. I love the lore in this game. The story's really good. More basic stuff. Like I'm going to turn into the Twitch chat now and say loadouts.
Sure.
I'm not going to say stash space, but I am going to say backpack space. With this becoming more of a looter, I feel like backpack space is an issue right now for me. And then I agree with the world map extension. More weapons, more named weapons. I feel like the named weapons should have their own color. That would add to the carrot on a stick and help me play longer and be more satisfied with endgame. Those are just some of them. I have like a million, but
yeah. So we've all got our like laundry list. So, and what about you, Breezy?
You know, an arena or a real raid. Just the thing is, if I would prefer, if I had to choose between the two, some sort of, you know, Crucible, some sort of actual PvP format, because if they give us a real raid, the only thing that's going to stop me from, like, you know, it's going to be like a raid in Destiny. If it's not like World of Warcraft, I'm going to do it once, twice, and be like, all right, that was cool. Yeah, now I'm done, right? If they make it like World of Warcraft, where it's insanely awesome and epic, and I want to keep doing it, and it's just amazing, I'd love that. But I think that might be really hard. But you know, a real end game. Something to do to keep doing that's really fun. So either some real raid or an arena.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, and for me personally, I think the thing I'm most interested in now is like the challenge. You know, again, I really enjoy the game right now. I think it's great. It's really nice and cruisy, but you know, as someone that's really looking for a challenging game, I just want to see an additional layer added on top of what's already there for everything, really. You know, whether it's incursions or missions or whatever, that really pushes players. Because the number one thing that I'm looking for right now is that build diversity to come back. And I really feel like, you know, having that harder content forces us to gear in a more interesting way as a group, and I'm really into all that sort of stuff. So yeah. But look, I think, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe hope I'm not paraphrasing you incorrectly, but I think 1.4 is getting lots of ticks across the board from this group of people. I think we seem like we're pretty happy with where it's landed.
Absolutely.
And that's a huge deal.
Really good step in the right direction.
Like, this game was broken as fuck. You know what I mean? Like, it was broken. And the fact that you've got all these people in this channel now that are like, you know what, this is actually a pretty good game now, that's a huge accomplishment. And I think that's to Massive's credit, obviously, but it's like also to the community's credit, because the community, like, they made their voices heard, they gave feedback. You know, like, this wasn't just like Massive doing this on their own. It was very much a collaborative effort. And I'm not talking about like YouTubers. I'm talking about like everybody, you know, everybody that played the PTS, even console players that didn't, who still made their voices heard. Like, everyone contributed to this success. And it's honestly, the way I'm seeing it, even in this preliminary state, it's one of the biggest turnarounds in the history of video games. And obviously we're only 1 week in. Let's see how it goes. But like, it's a really, really big deal. So I think that, like, fantastic. Awesome. So excited to see the player base grow the way that it is. Like looking at Steam charts is really exciting to see people coming back, and I'm sure we can expect similar growth on consoles as well. 1.5 is just around the corner, and I'm sure that's going to bring exciting stuff. And then there's also Last Stand next year as well, like the last piece of DLC, and that's sort of meant to be early in the year as well. So there's stuff coming. It's coming soon, and it's very, very exciting. But yeah, thank you all to everyone here in this channel for this chat. For joining me today. It was really awesome to have you all here, and special thanks to Tinkkz for stopping by.
Oh, I get the special.
You get the special one because you're the new person. You're like the putting up with this, and like it's just nice to have you here.
You guys are bad. Come on.
For all these other guys as well, thank you. You're all awesome. And for everyone that's listened, thank you very much. Really hope you enjoyed the chat, and we'll definitely be doing one of these again for patch 1.5. So do look out for that. For now, guys, thanks for watching. Take good care, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye. Done.
Do we not say bye?
Oh well, yeah. Typically, now it's awkward.
We don't say bye.
You don't say bye. Is it not allowed, Marco?
No, we don't say bye.
We don't say bye.
What the-
Okay. Goodbye.